Hello, and welcome to Doctor Who 50 Years Ago, the show that looks back to the episode that aired in 1967 and looks at the differences between then and now. This week, episode 6 of The Evil of the Daleks, also known as the Skaro degradation. I am Ben.
I'm Luke.
And I am Nick.
And here we are, and here we go into the news from 1967. On Tuesday, the 20th of June, the US House of Representatives voted to approve a bill making the burning of the American flag a federal crime, and then discovered the bill didn't have the word burning in it. The US Senate eventually corrected the wording. The power of the legislature and patriotism.
I think what that suggests is just how they're being completely illogical about this, and it's all very, they're very emotional about this particular issue. So they rushed through this law without even properly considering it, which isn't a good thing. And also, to my mind, this almost seems to go against the First Amendment, which protects freedom of speech, because surely flag burning is a viable form of free speech.
Yeah, it's part of America's culture of what I will call pseudo-liberalism, where you're free to do everything except burn the American flag, and
anything that tarnishes America's image, basically.
Yes, and I'm thinking of SOPA and PIPA and all the other wonderful niceties that happened in the early and late 2000s.
Yeah, well, I think this in particular is almost certainly going to be to do with the Vietnam War, and presumably peace protesters burning the American flag in protest against the war.
We'd like you to support the government, please. Oh, good. It's nice. It's nice that message has carried on 50 years from then till now.
I mean, this is a bit of a reactionary kind of response here by the House of Representatives, and I suppose, yeah, as you say, to this day they're still a bit flag wavy, right? What was it? What did they name the act that stripped lots of people of their rights?
Oh, the Patriot Act. That's the one I was forgetting about.
Yeah, that's what they call rather than I don't know, the Security Act or something, which will make more sense. No, it's the Patriot Act.
Yeah, I was also referring to other countries in my soliloquy, but there we are. Hey ho. And finally, on Wednesday, the 21st of June, in a cultural event, the Summer of Love event that originally employed that name began in San Francisco, where hippies celebrated the summer solstice liberally, as the young teenagers did and do nowadays.
So, Luke, do you have anything to say?
Our spokesperson for the hippies.
I am not a hippie.
No.
No, you just have long hair.
Yeah, and know these sorts of things somehow. It does show how this new generation of hippies is looking back to some more ancient traditions and being able to popularize them. It's
the ancient cultures reinvigorating themselves through modern history to suit the age, right?
Yeah.
So liberal use of drug taking explodes in the late 80s, as well as this period for the first Summer of Love and the 2 second Summers of Love in the late 80s.
Yeah. By becoming, shall we say, more popular and mainstream, it does show that these traditions are being adapted. It is interesting to see the traditions being so manipulated by the young, and they're taking it into their own hands, rather than vigorously sticking to tradition and rite and dogma, as would have been the case had this event taken place nearly 100 years earlier.
It's culturally important to see how the youth grasped old things and new things and twisted them to their advantage, and this happens both 50 years ago and now, and that is the purpose of the news, to see the differences and the similarities. That was the news, and now we shall get into The Evil of the Daleks episode 6, which picks itself up a little bit in terms of pacing and action, but only by a little bit.
Well, it's definitely scarier and more intense this time. So even if it does go a lot slower, it's much more like a horror film's pacing.
Difficult to see how they can make this story tighter paced because of so many elements in the plot. You've got the Waterfields and being cooped up. You've got the need to create the human factor in order to implement the human factor in order to get to Skaro, in order to... Yeah, possibly 6 episodes might make it better, but I can't see how.
Well, it depends how much you want to crush the middle, because these last 2 episodes, I'm not sure how much I could take out in order to sit.
Yeah. I would say the first 2 episodes and the last 2 episodes, you can't take anything out of. They're perfectly paced. It's episodes 3, 4, and 5 that are the weaker installments, I'd say.
Yeah, and that's why I say this beginning of Act 3 of this play of the Evil of the Daleks is better than the end of Act 2.
Anything with lots of Daleks in it is, of course, better than anything without many Daleks in it.
I guess. I'm trying desperately to prove you wrong, but I can't think of anything. Oh yeah, the pilot. Oh dear, never mind. Yes, it's a slightly better paced episode, and we'll look at it in greater detail and see what it gets right and what it gets less right. We have humanised Daleks, which attempt to be cute, but they are voiced by Peter Hawkins, so that doesn't work. What the Doctor's been given are Daleks he can make be friendly, sort of. And then those 3 Daleks, and indeed all the others, are called forth to Skaro to get the plot moving.
I would say is, the Dalek voices are quite weird. In fact, this whole scene is very weird from the perspective of the show at this point. They're doing something really totally different with the Daleks than they've ever done before. And I think this was quite a risky move by Whittaker to do this. Doing something like this with the Daleks, seeing as they're being probed a lot more seriously than, let's say, they're not just being treated as robots that are bad or whatever.
Yeah, all comic foils in the chase by Nation.
Mm-hmm. And again, I think it's good that they, even though they're starting to act more human, they still sound a bit unnerving when they talk, because it reflects the fact that the audience, are a bit unnerved by them being a bit like weird like this. It's weird to see the Daleks being childish.
But that is so wonderfully subverted at the end when they say, "We must go now, we are called." You could almost forget that they were just killing machine Daleks when they start to act that way. They have these sing-song voices that give them an actual amount of personality, unlike the Cyberman voices, which were horrendous parodies. You can sort of empathise with how much they're trying, especially considering that the Doctor says that they are just children. And this contrasts them really well with the rest of the Daleks. They have this individuality, they have these aims, and they have a personality. Even when they do their chant all together of saying, "Dizzy, dizzy Daleks," which calls to mind a little, "We will have our power," they all still have their own little spins on it. And I think that's an important moment to contrast that unified Dalek screaming that we had at the end of Power of the Daleks episode 5.
Yes, and in terms of the story, it's a nice little set-up to the eventual denouement in the next episode. Maxtable tells Waterfield that Victoria's been released to get him out of the way, and prepares to go to Skaro himself. But the Daleks are 5 moves ahead. They've prepared a bomb to blow up the house because we're finally bored with it. Very subtle. Waterfield discovers Maxtable's arrangement with the Daleks, and this fully turns him against Maxtable, who's gone cuckoo. In due course, the Doctor, Jamie, and Waterfield all escape to Skaro, and that's the first 10 minutes. It's paced, I guess, again. Difficult to say. This is resolving more human tensions within this Dalek Pact episode.
Well, do you think this episode would have been improved if we cut down this bit at the house with all the human stuff? just had more Dalek stuff later on?
I don't know. They explore Maxtable fairly well. The greed thing gets pushed on and on and on for these last 2 episodes. Waterfield's depressive downward spiral seems to have reached the bottom, and it's not going any lower, which is what we would have hoped it would have done until the last 10 minutes of episode 7, but that's spoilers. So he seems to be quite superfluous at this point, except for preparing for stuff in episode 7. I suppose you could cut him out at that point. But then there's also something about his face that I just like. Never mind.
Well,
understand, but then that means I understand and sympathise with the characters, which means they are needed. So there goes my argument.
Well, it's good to have Maxtable here as that bridge between the humans and the Daleks. Because if you just had protagonists at the end, then there would be a lot less conflict, and I think it would be a lot less tense at the end.
Yeah, okay, I do get you, especially with the stuff that happens next episode. There's going to be a lot of foreshadowing in this one.
What I really like here is it almost mirrors episode 2, because in episode 2 you have the sci-fi bleeding into the contemporary Earth, and as a result the contemporary Earth is basically just gone from the story.
Yes.
Here we have the exact same thing. We have the future bleeding into the past, and once again it's not surviving. There's this constant onslaught where everything is destroying the thing behind it. A sort of scorched earth storytelling.
Yes, that's a very interesting way of putting it. Just shows Whittaker's strengths as an author, really. Victoria and Kemmel are locked up in a Dalek prison cell and are greeted by Maxtable, whom the Daleks are fully using him to their advantage. The Doctor, Jamie and Waterfield make their way slowly to the Dalek city. Maxtable tries to question the Daleks, but they have the upper hand, hitting him and taking him away. And then the Doctor and the others are spotted, giving Victoria and Kemmel hope. All these Dalek shots are happening, and they are naturally visual, which is a bit of a nuisance for these missing episodes. So CGI is essential in this recon, and it helps somewhat. Of all the ones to pour into, you need to give Daleks visuals. Except when they're Big Finish.
What I really like about this bit is how sadistic the Daleks are. They act like the humans are simply ants.
Yes, yeah. And that makes sense with their fascistic uprising, which has come back in full force as they return to their home planet.
And it gives this bit a real sense of danger, as we're in the Dalek city, and the Daleks are there to completely crush you, and no one is able to get free in this episode. You're always under their thumb in that prison. There's a real sense of them being overlords and have basically won at this point.
I do think this is the bit when Victoria and Kemmel talk, isn't it? And
yes.
And she says that she'll protect him, and then Kemmel just sort of scoffs at that. Which I think this is where perhaps the show it kind of it almost subverts the expected gender norms of the time, but it doesn't in the end. You know, it's the guy who's going to protect the big strong man. The poor woman has to let the man protect her. You know, sort of. It is a sign that, although it's very forward for its time, it shows how far we've moved on now, let's say.
It might be a subtle reference to how they tried to make a more modern uptakey character with Polly, but that failed miserably, so they decided to sort of put it in Victoria's character plotline in the first story she's in. Yes, I have inklings of being thoroughly modern and stand up for myself, but oh no, hang on a minute. No, that's not going to work. Yeah. Tell you what, let's go back to the stereotypes.
Yeah, well, I think by making the character Victorian, it means they can get away with her not being as assertive.
Yes, it was a good exercise for this and next season before they have to start thinking about more powerful female characters and they start creating Zoe and Liz and things like that.
Yeah, so you know that to compare it with in a Stephen Moffat script, let's say, the Victoria character would end up protecting Kemmel.
For one reason or another.
Yeah.
Depending on character to plot and development and all that jazz.
I suspect it would be the pen is mightier than the sword sort of way that she wins or something or protects him.
Yeah.
In fact, we have to look to the Paternoster gang when you say that, and how Strax, the soldier male, who should be the defensive one, is played for laughs, whereas Jenny is this kung fu fighter, but also hides it. That has some interesting gender politics, and actually does subvert expectations.
And we can link those two very, very loosely with the whole Victorian era point and how we believe that gender stereotypes start to subvert themselves around this period before fully rearing its head with the suffragette movement, and on, historically. The Daleks discover the humanised Daleks and take them away. Kemmel and Victoria are taken into another prison and have to deal with angry man Maxtable. He's taken to be seemingly tortured, as is Victoria, but it's to lure the Doctor, Jamie and Waterfield into a trap. But then one of the humanised Daleks seemingly rounds them up, but he's got the wrong mark, and so the Doctor pushes him off a cliff. There are two plans in one here, which is very confusing, but it shows the cunning of the Daleks, I guess. There's a lot happening in these few minutes. Dalek plans are strange. How do we round up the Doctor who we've just discovered is here? Do we use this human Dalek we've just suddenly discovered? Or do we just do something else? As in, torture the humans, except we haven't tortured them.
What I like about the humanised Dalek, well, the fake one at least, is that when the Dalek Supreme finds the Alpha Dalek, I think, oh, I guess it's Omega, whatever, the Dalek says, "The Doctor gave it to me. He is my friend." And the Supreme doesn't even question this. It just immediately knows how to use this to its advantage. And that's a very subtle knowledge of human psychology that really pushes them to be sinister. So these aren't just shooty pop art anymore.
No,
They've really started to understand their enemy. It makes them very terrifying.
They're using intelligence to their own advantage, and it links up with the fact that anyone can do this for either positive or negative gain, and the Daleks are using it for the negative gain, the enslavement of others, and for their positive benefit of conquering. Yes, whereas humans don't, and that's one of the points. And
well, we do sometimes. History would suggest otherwise, Ben.
I try.
Well, there's a good little bit about this episode is that it focuses mainly on the Daleks, which is good. So some of the episodes have been quite human-focused, so it's good to draw the focus back to the Daleks now that we're getting towards the business end. But what that does do is it really does bring into focus the contrast of the humans that are on Skaro. So that would be Waterfield and Kemmel. And they really are fish out of water. It really is quite stark just how uncomfortable they look there and how wrong it seems that they are in Skaro.
I agree.
Yes, that is very true. The Doctor, Jamie and Waterfield arrive in the Dalek city, get caught, and meet the Dalek Emperor. They banter, and the Doctor believes he's beaten the Daleks by giving them the human factor. The human factor! Sorry. They banter, and the Doctor believes he's beaten the Daleks by giving them human factor. And they will revolt and create a civil war. Hurrah! But the Daleks, in discovering the human factor, have created the Dalek factor. Hooroo! The negative side of the human factor, which, with the captured TARDIS, they wish to implant in the entire history of Earth. It's the shock twist that nobody expected, that the Daleks have completely thought of everything. It's their ultimate cunning explosion. It's almost out of nowhere, and that's great.
Oh yeah, this scene is awesome, and the Dalek Emperor just looks perfect, and he sounds perfect, and he is quite imposing. It would have been great to see the actual shot, the animal, what they actually filmed for it, because I imagine it would have been shot in a way so it made the Doctor and companions look very small compared to the Emperor. You can tell this is the set they spent money on, and I would say this also very much evokes the, oh my god, this is the big series finale, which, no other series like seasons 1, 2, and 3 didn't really end with any big serial at the end. It wasn't a big finale like you would get now. You just sort of fizzled out. They just had a normal episode at the end. But here, we are truly treated to the first season finale to a Doctor Who series ever. And boy, is it good. And of course, it's good that, again, the Daleks are now shown to be clever. They've outwitted the Doctor. It's because too often the Daleks are just stupid and always beaten too easily. Here, it does very much look like the Daleks have won. And so you're thinking, how is the Doctor going to turn this around in just one episode? And it's not a cop-out either, so...
What I find so interesting about the design of the Dalek Emperor is that he doesn't have a gun, and he's being plugged into the mainframe. He doesn't even have a gun when he's brought back in the new series, although he's not quite as plugged in at that point. What makes that interesting is the Dalek Emperor on his own doesn't have any power. What makes the Daleks scary is that inbuilt gun, and that they can just kill you. This Dalek Emperor doesn't even have a manipulator arm, which is what nerds call the plunger. He is an impotent emperor.
That is quite the metaphor. I love it.
He is simply plugged into the mainframe, giving his orders without any power to back them up.
Oh my god! I'm about to use the initials DT here. Okay, that's nice. Plugged into the mainframe, shouts a lot, completely impotent. Yeah, you get the idea. Bless us for being overtly political. Yes, because the imagery I see with the Dalek Emperor is literally that. It invokes the Emperor thing of a man lounging about in a chair, shouting at his minions. Dictatorial-wise or medieval-wise, it's using that concept in history of this is the big bad, the man, and it 99% usually is a man at the top.
In fact, this one has a deeper voice, like a Dalek that's gone through Dalek puberty.
Okay,
to be that man.
Yeah, and uses that to his advantage by shouting everybody down. It's just a great few metaphors in leadership and exercise and style. I wonder how the script describes him. That would probably make sense. Towering, imperious, those kind of descriptive adjectives.
They're good adjectives.
The Dalek Emperor is good. Good concept.
This is very New Who-esque in terms of you've got a series finale that truly is a series finale with big action at the end. This, isn't it? And it's with Daleks, so you can compare this directly to Series 1. In fact, in a lot of ways, superficially speaking at least, there are similarities. You've got Dalek Emperor, series finale, lots of action, lots of Daleks. So it's almost as if RTD was inspired by this, but he definitely wasn't. So I would say, actually, the last two episodes are more New Who than a lot of season 4 has been, just because there's more action. And I would say it's a very traditional Doctor. Sort of how he's acting in this is very traditional to how he is now, let's say.
But the childish outburst of, I don't care what you do to me now, that kind of thing.
And yeah, that he's, yeah.
There we go. Through a protracted discussion, we are able to look at the differences between classic Who and now, and how the Daleks are portrayed, both in terms of their cunning and their inhumanity. Thank you very much for watching. You can find us on Blogspot, which redirects to iTunes. Leave positive comments there, it helps. You can also find us on Facebook and YouTube, where you can like, comment and subscribe, and Google Plus if you dare. We shall be back next week to witness the final end of Season 4, that is. Until then, I've been Ben.
I've been Luke.
And I've been Nick.
Thank you, and goodbye.